Hi, Dr. Brett Hill here. It's back to school time, and one thing us parents don't want is kids coming home complaining of sore feet. The flat, wide and flexible shoes in the Vivo Barefoot Kids range is the perfect fit for your child's feet to grow up healthy and strong, the way they're designed to. And the great news, the Wellness Couch listeners can get 30% off the Vivo Barefoot range until the 1st of February 2016. All you have to do is go to www.soledistribution.com.au/The Wellness Couch. That's SOLE distribution.com.au/The Wellness Couch and enter the code The Wellness Couch. Vivo Barefoot, the original barefoot shoe since 2003.
TheWellnessCouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today we're talking about traumatised womanhood, which comes off the back of last week we did Spiritual Vagina, which was a little bit of a joke, but more opening up and awakening what it was to be a woman and what our connection to our sexuality and our intimacy was. And so we thought, I've actually just finished reading Naomi Wolf's book, Vagina, which I just got so many insights out of. Again, I had another profound vagina moment. And I just thought, we really need to talk about this because certainly being a birth worker, I came across so much sexual trauma or trauma to the vagina in women that had massive impact on who that woman was as a woman, who she was as a mother, and how she approached birth. So I've seen a lot of it firsthand, and I know it's been a topic of discussion around any birth worker that you'll come across, midwives, doulas, anyone. And there were so many interesting passages in this Vagina book by Naomi Wolf that I thought it's really worth sharing and actually just opening up that light a little bit more in case you yourself or someone you know has undergone some sort of trauma or sexual abuse. And maybe there's something in this that just, I don't know, opens up a window or sheds some light.
And I guess I wonder too, and I'm sure that you'll go into that, I also wonder if it's maybe not even an outward trauma that somebody would say, that was abuse or that was this, but it might even just be your perception of how you were treated.
Gosh, that's true,
or even just how you felt as a woman and you didn't feel, like probably in my case, you didn't feel enough as a woman, and so you sort of almost shut off that part of yourself and didn't want to go there, and even that in itself can be somewhat distancing from, yourself as a woman and being open enough to really allow birth to come through you and be fully there and present and willing and open, which I think is what you're saying about your birth working experience with so many women who, you'd almost kind of see their attitudes to their bodies or their attitude to their, vagina, and if they were really kind of like repulsed by it, you almost like you can almost see the way that that's going to unfold from the point of view of birth.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not even just the sexual abuse that we're talking about with the vagina. I certainly saw lots of women second or third time round that were wanting to do over in a way the birth that they had employed me for because their first or second had been so traumatic. So you're dealing with strangers and men and people putting things in and out of your vagina or taking control of that area, or perhaps it's been ripped or cut during birth, or there's been poor healing afterwards. Like I've seen so many versions of what trauma is to a woman that has massive impact on who she was or is. And I really wish I had found the perfect passage out of Naomi Wolf's book to really talk to you about what the vagina represents within a woman, but I couldn't find the one passage. It's more like she talks about what the vagina represents to a woman spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically throughout the entire book. So you get it's almost like a building block step. So I can't have one passage that's going to really fully highlight it for you, but essentially what she's trying to get across in the book is that throughout history, going way, way, way back into ancient cultures and certainly still through traditional Chinese medicine and Indian Sanskrit type of medicine, the vagina is the center of a woman. It's the center of her spiritual being. It's the place where her life force and energy, creativity, inspiration, And really she represents the life force for that family. Anything that comes through her and out of her relationships is all about the life force that she's able to hold, muster and share, outward. And it is wholeheartedly the centre of a woman's creativity. So creativity is not just I can crochet and I can cut and paste. Creativity is a much broader spectrum of being able to think outside of the box, create new things around her, new relationships, new friendships, new life, new businesses. Creativity is about the ability to muster new things in your life and within yourself. And that has ripples and impacts throughout all areas of your life, is your ability to be creative, which is the inspiration of a woman. It's the divine feminine in action, really, isn't it? So what Naomi Wolf is saying is that physically there's a whole neural pathway that connects into the vagina that goes straight up the spinal cord and into the brain. So physically we know there's a direct connection between the vagina itself and the brain, the wiring, the processes, the way that the brain manipulates the, I suppose you'd say, information from the vagina, which then creates thought processes, patterns, psychological, patterning or processes within the brain directly related to what's happening in the vagina. So when we create physical trauma to the physical vagina, it automatically goes almost straight up that spinal cord into the very core of who that woman is. And it has, what she's saying is, it has the ramifications and the potential to utterly change a woman's life, because it's not just the physical vagina. It's her creativity, it's her life force, it's her life inspiration, and it is literally her spiritual and neurological wiring.
Yeah, which we know, through neuroplasticity, that stuff is so firm. If you're not actively trying to repattern things, that's the track you're on. That's kind of where your memories are referring to all the time. That experience, and you're continually living your life to reaffirm that, unless you're consciously going back into the pain in this case, and trying to heal that.
Yes, exactly. So I'm going to just read you a couple of passages out of her book. So she has a whole heap of research in this book, and she did a whole heap of work over in Africa with refugee camps and women crisis centres. So this is a passage that she uses out of this, which I think probably just highlights a little bit more what we're talking about. So here we go. In spite of their individual courage, what was unmistakable was the aspects of their very souls, in some profound way, had been hollowed out of them. In any one woman, this dimming of vitality was notable. Why would thousands and thousands of soldiers in a conflict situation have used sharp objects to destroy the vaginas of thousands and thousands of women? There was nothing about the rapes with these injuries that seemed sexual to me, or even psychodynamic. I believe, given my understanding of the pelvic nerve and its relationship to female confidence, creativity and will, that these tens of thousands of men were not, in commas, getting off on damaging the internal pelvic structures of these hundreds of thousands of women. Women are brutalised in conflicts in Africa and around the world in this way decade after decade. It was the commanders in Sierra Leone and the Democratic Republic of Congo who ordered this kind of atrocity and who ordered their troops to rape. Individual soldiers of the IRC have been interviewed and have explained they had no choice but to follow these orders. Jimmy Briggs, founder of anti-rape and anti-violence organisation Man Up, says, "There is something different about victims of violent rape. I have interviewed people who have been traumatised just as severely in other ways, and there is not the same outcome. I have seen the difference of the result of this kind of trauma from other kinds of trauma. It is as if a light has gone out of these women's eyes." The Freudian model that violent rape is a result of individual sexual deviancy simply does not account for the systemic use of violent rape in war. So, I've got a couple more passages I want to read, but maybe we'll sit with that first. Actually, no, we'll read this next bit because it probably sums it up. Are you ready for the next bit? Okay. Radical feminism sees rape as simply a demonstration of unequal power relations and takes as its motto the assertion that rape is about power, not sex. This is closer to what I now believe to be the truth, but it still misses the ultimate insight. If it is just about power, why involve sex? Why not just beat, threaten, starve, or imprison a woman? You can get plenty of power over women in ways that are non-sexual. But if your goal is to break a woman psychologically, it is efficient to do violence to her vagina. You will break her faster and more thoroughly than if you simply beat her, because of the vulnerability of the vagina as a mediator of consciousness. Trauma to the vagina imprints deeply on the female brain, conditioning and influencing the rest of her body and mind. When you rape a woman, or if you sexually abuse her in childhood, you may be patterning her body, possibly for the rest of her life, in ways that embed fear, more easily triggered stress responses, and attendant risk aversion into the very neural fabric of her responses to the world, that may even interrupt her ability to process recent memory in a way that strengthens her ongoing sense of self.
That's heavy.
Isn't it?
Really heavy.
It's hugely heavy, but that's why I also thought I wanted to talk about it, because it was such a profound insight for me when she really... And in her book, she brings all of these conclusions together through first going through case histories, interviewing a whole heap of experts from different backgrounds, and using a whole heap of research.
Yeah.
So her book is really dense in the conclusions that it draws. Almost feel enlightened, because she really brings that information together from all sorts of different places. Yeah. But what I found so profound about that was, because we can tend to think the atrocity of rape is almost like a deviant person with a will to do that. But essentially what she's saying is it's been going on for so many decades. It's almost an embedded patterning of certain
it's like
cultures or tribes.
It's a cultural norm for those, people, in that kind of situation, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I think even deeper than that, she's sort of saying it's been going on for, so many years, but you could even say for thousands, possibly even since the beginning of human race, that to some extent there is on some level an awareness that to break a woman, to rape her is going to have that effect, or to do violence to her vagina as opposed to beating her.
I read that also as really they actually haven't, in the Western world we tend to feel like that women are not revered and that women are the weaker sex, and that, but actually feel like what that's telling us is that these cultures know the power of a woman. They actually know, know that the woman is vastly more powerful than a man, and that a way to undermine that power and a way to go to the source of that power is to,
literally
shred it.
Yes.
And that's what they're doing.
Yes.
That is the way that they're undermining that power that we don't potentially see in our Western eyes, because we're so cultured to see that women aren't empowered enough. They know how empowered women are. They know that women are the source of creation, that they know that the influence women have over men sexually and, from their energy. They know that women are the source of the family, of the, whether you bear a son or not, in those cultures, obviously a son is everything. So to bring trauma to that, that must be, for some men, depending on their own experience, be enormously rewarding if they're very scarred in themselves as a result of, their view of women.
But even as a global, as a tactic for an entire nation, the way to short circuit that, to keep women under control, it's sort of been almost wired in that's how you do it, that there's a result that's come out of, or a learning that's come out of perhaps over hundreds of years trial and error of what works and what doesn't for breaking a woman, and they've on some level figured out that the way to really break a woman psychologically is actually to rape her. Which is, so profound. And we know that in Australia here, 1 in 3 women are victims of sexual abuse. So when you think about how many girlfriends you have, how many of them have had trauma to their vagina and therefore to their entire self. How many women do you know that are really broken and scarred and view the world so differently through a different filter because their wiring has been forever changed?
Yeah.
Who have a dampener on their creativity or on their, contact to joy and inspiration in life, or who, constantly mistrust themselves and their level of confidence because it's been so shaken.
And I guess, you isolated those passages. Were you really able to draw parallels very clearly between that and what you see with the women that you've worked with?
Look, I think yes and no is the answer to that. Why I pulled those ones out is I felt that they were so vivid in the way that she pulls together those. I'd never thought about, I guess the concept of rape psychologically being proven in a way to break a woman had never really dawned on me before. I knew obviously, post-traumatic stress response and but I don't think we've ever given it, or I've never given it, the depth of awareness that it literally can change the very neural structure of a woman. And I found it so profound that in a way, as a species, we've learnt how to break a woman is not through any other form of violence. It's
to go where a woman's most vulnerable and to where and where to most effectively short circuit.
Yes, but that's a learned response in a way. I found that so profound. And
I also wonder if that's almost an inherent biological response.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. And, psychological DNA from how many centuries ago do we even know? I mean, it's been going on for, as long as history will ever, any war ever has used rape of women in some way to hurt or oppress or stunt the growth of whatever nation it is that we're fighting against.
Yeah.
It's always been a tactic. It's not just in Africa. It's probably more profound in our Western world right now. But even genital, mutilation, how many, there's clitorectomies and there's...
it's still a standard procedure in most African countries.
Yeah, and certainly Middle Eastern as well, the sewing up of the vagina, all of there's so many things that are done to women's vaginas that it's fascinating to me that she can really draw this really strong parallel between the nerves that are in there and their direct correlation to how our brains wire from then on. And she actually has this great paragraph, I'm going to see if I can find it down here, that was about midwives and birth. So I thought maybe we'd have a look. Okay, here it is. Many women today feel that their sexuality is something distinct from the rest of their character and is cut off in some ways from their other, more admirable roles as mothers, wives, or workers. Some feel inhibited in bed by the sense that their sexual pleasure in some way demeans them. This set of beliefs is not a human constant. It is not even very old. It was essentially alarmed by female enfranchisement, a word I struggle with, and female sexuality was assigned to a new profession, the male gynecologists. The Victorian period saw a wholesale shift in how women's vaginas and clitorises were dealt with medically. This shift transferred a middle-class woman's sexual and reproductive health from the hands of midwives to those of male doctors. These doctors formed professional organisations in order to marginalise midwives. The midwives' approach to sexuality and birth had been to advise and to support natural processes. The male doctor's model of dealing with the vagina and uterus was rather one of heroic medicine, or impatient, sometimes violent, intervention. And I thought it's still fairly relevant.
I think it is, yeah.
There's still, we kind of have to expand what, I hear so many women joke about what has happened to them during their, in inverted commas, traumatic birth in some way. I trained with a woman who was like, oh, look, by the time X, Y, and Z had happened, you could have parked a bus up there and I wouldn't have cared. There's so much, you're in the stirrups, your legs are spread, everyone's walking in and out of the room. There's been so much in and out and cutting and tools and implements and all sorts of, that's it, it's all gone. I've got no dignity left. And we joke about it.
Yeah.
So many women in our culture jokes about that.
Which means it's so normalised, right? It's just...
But for that woman at some level, it's not.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's what I want to say is that we have such this thing with birth that we kind of go, oh, pat, doesn't matter, love. You've got your good baby at the end. Pat, don't worry about it. Everyone's fine and healthy. you know,
Yeah.
pat. Could have packed a bath up there, who
Just
cares?
sweep the
You know,
rest of
how
it
funny.
under a rug, you know,
Yeah.
just anything else that happened.
Yes, we don't talk about it. But particularly for birth, it's such a moment in life when a woman is so spiritually, emotionally and mentally open that the trauma, I always saw that as that trauma could almost access a deeper root quicker with a longer lasting imprint. But I now wonder, having read Naomi Wolf's book, if it really is literally because the vagina is the centre of a woman's being and her soul, that we don't have the reverence and the respect for that in this culture anymore. And it's just a part of the body. So you can essentially do whatever you want to it because the end goal is the baby that's inside of there, not the woman and what that represents to her. And I do worry, like particularly episiotomies, I don't think... I'm going to get controversial
No,
here.
get controversial. No, I like it.
I don't know if you've ever seen an episiotomy, but they do honestly look... like vaginal mutilation. I can't. It's actually I'm pretty good with any type of blood, guts, and gore, but I've never been able to really seriously watch one. Like I always kind of find myself going, ugh.
Yeah.
Like it's just, and women don't seem to realise the amount of muscle and nerve fibre that's being cut there and how deep that goes and how long that takes to heal. And sometimes I've seen some women who have never healed properly. I met one woman once who came up to me in tears after a lecture I'd given, and she said, I just have realised for the first time that it's not okay, that I'm so badly scarred, I can't have sex, it's too painful.
Gosh.
So this woman, for about 15 years, that's how old her child was, about 15, had lived with this shame of she can't have sex because it's too painful.
Wow.
And I just think we just do not give the reverence and the respect
Because,
for what
you know,
is there, the centre of a woman.
There's a standard procedure now, pretty much, in most hospitals to give an episiotomy.
Yeah, it is. And look, all manner of all sorts of other stuff that happens in birth.
Yeah.
And some of it, of course, sometimes some things are medically necessary, and there's a way to roll with that.
Yeah.
It's when the woman almost isn't part of the picture that becomes traumatic.
Yeah.
That things are done to her body without necessarily her full awareness, full sense of consent, by which I mean, okay, she might have gone, okay, you do whatever you want because you know best.
Yeah.
But she's 100% handed over her power.
Yeah.
She's not empowered in that situation, which is very much like rape. Things are being done to her body that she doesn't have a conscious decision or control over.
Yeah.
Possibly she doesn't fully understand if she has other options or what the ramifications are of not doing or doing that.
Yeah.
And it's done so quickly that this is what I always say to my clients, is you have no choices unless you know your choices.
Absolutely.
Because if you're there, it's too late. If you don't understand by that point in time when you're there what the ramifications are of doing that or not doing whatever that thing is in an intervention, you've got no choice. You're part of a system. And I've seen so much trauma to women's vaginas through the processes, not just of natural birth, but through the medical interventions of natural birth that may or may not have been necessary because women have no power.
Yeah. And that's what it is. It's a power imbalance, you know, because it doesn't happen when a woman is fully informed and, you know, has caregivers who are able to also help, you know, advocate on her behalf where she's not able to.
And takes the willingness of her power. She takes it back and says, this is my body, my baby, my birth.
Yeah.
And treat me like I am this process, not we need to do this to you to get your baby out.
Yeah, I'm not just simply a vessel.
Yes. And I think women very often I see them so often hand over their power rather than keeping it for themselves. Anyway, the long and the short of this is I really just wanted to get out there that if you yourself have undergone childhood sexual abuse or sexual abuse in your teenage or adult years, or you're the sister of someone or the mother of someone or the friend of someone that has, that perhaps, you know, you're able to really pull some parallels and have a look at what we don't consciously talk about in this culture is the deeper spiritual and psychological ramifications of trauma to the vagina, and therefore trauma to the woman herself.
And we talk a lot about this, in our podcast as a common theme around that idea that the body remembers everything. Everything is stored in the subconscious. So it's not simply a matter of getting over something. Where we have trauma or whatever, we're going to continually attract experiences in that are going to continue to push those buttons for us, because to indicate that there's healing to be done. The body doesn't just get over it. It's got a memory of everything that's ever happened to us. So it's not simply enough to think that time is a healer.
No, it's not. And you only need something to re-trigger that. So, and birth is always going to be the time to do that. So if you've ever had sexual abuse in your past, it will 100% come up in your birth. It'll come up in the way that you avoid birth, and you have to, in inverted commas, have a Caesar, so you don't have to go there.
Yeah.
Or it'll come up in the way of you having a, I want to say transcendental, but this kind of living in your subconscious realm of almost a reliving of that, because you're walking into the subconscious, or an avoiding of walking into the subconscious. You don't want to really let go and fully move into birth because there's pain and there's scariness there. This is why you need a really supported, well-structured birth, particularly if you've got sexual abuse in your past. And it's also why it would be worthwhile looking for practitioners that do non-sexual healing massage of the vagina and the structures and the nerves and the tendons that are in that area, because it is the center of that structure that neurologically connects directly through your spinal cord to your brain. So when there's a few practitioners that do it, but what you'll notice is that they teach you also, or your partner, how to actually do that as well. And most practitioners, and Naomi certainly talks about them in her book too, notice that as soon as they start massaging or working on those particular areas, emotion just erupts out of these women, that it's also the stored place for all of that unhealed trauma in your life that's sapping your creativity and your life lust is sitting. So it's worthwhile looking back at the vagina the way that the Sanskrit tantric versions and the way that the really old philosophical Chinese versions were, which this is such a sacred, life-giving place of the woman that you only, enter that area with absolute reverence and respect for what that houses within a woman. And even if you haven't physically gone through a process of rape or trauma in that area, maybe you've had an experience in the past where you've gone along with something with a partner and then in hindsight not felt okay about it, or didn't feel like you had a voice in the moment to say you weren't okay with whatever that was. The trauma can come in a number of different layers, or a traumatic birth. Yeah. And if you've had any of those experiences, really have reverence for the impact and ramifications that has in your life. Know that you can work towards healing that. You just need to seek out the right practitioners. And if you need any help, please drop us an email or Facebook private message and we will help you.
Yes.
So to get in contact with us is on Facebook at the moment, Nourishing the Mother. The website is coming for you, Bridget.
Yes, it's suburbansandcastles.com. And we've got an event coming up in February, which is most likely to succeed. So it looks at the education system and how we need to move into a direction that's more fostering of innovation and creativity.
That ties in beautifully.
It does, yeah. So that's coming up. And for Jules?
Is thepleasurenutritionist.com.
And we'd love you to rate us on iTunes, if you're enjoying our podcasts.
Yes.
And of course,
keeps us going.
It does. And of course, if you have any suggestions for topics or you've got any feedback, we'd love to hear from you too.
Yes, and you can 100% private message us. It doesn't have to be a public post if you're
not
comfortable with that.
We get some beautiful emails, and it really touches us because it encourages us to continue to be vulnerable and to continue to go into the spaces that might be somewhat challenging too.
Yeah, that are really having, deep messages for our listeners and women that are out there that we're really wanting to share that with.
Yeah.
So, definitely.
So until next week when we continue to peel back the layers of your mothering journey. Bye.
Hi, it's Damien Christoph here. Are you ready to take your life to the most incredible level possible in 2016?
Well, we've had 3 sold-out wellness summits these last few years, but honestly, nothing comes close to the Wellness Breakthrough, and we have just 3 spots remaining. Your favourite wellness couch experts, the Wellness Guys, Karen Smith, Kim Morrison, Quirky Cooking's Joe Whitten, Marcus Pearce, and of course Carl Brock are gathering in the Dandenong Ranges for 3 days and 2 nights for one incredible event. If you want possibly the greatest peer group in health and wellness to help you catapult your life to the next level, then we'd love to see you at the Wellness Breakthrough from February 5th to the 7th. But again, there's only 3 spots available. Entry to the Breakthrough is by application only, and to apply, simply email your contact details to marcus@thewellnesscouch.com.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.